The knock came at the worst time. Grandma Nola had just turned off the kitchen light. The whole house was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes your ears feel loud. Outside, Rise tapped the window like tiny fingers. Inside, the clock ticked slow and steady, like it was counting secrets. Then, 3 sharp knocks. Nola froze with one hand on the hallway switch. Nobody came this late. Not in her small street, not in this weather. 3 more knocks, harder this time. Her heart began to thump in her chest. She reached under the side table and wrapped her fingers around the small flashlight she always kept there. It wasn't a weapon, but it made her feel less alone. "Who is it?" she called, trying to sound calm. No answer, just the rain. And then a voice, young, rough, careful. "Please, I'm not here to hurt you." Nola's throat went dry. She didn't open the door. She stepped closer and looked through the peephole. A boy? No, not a boy. A young man, maybe early 20s. He stood with his shoulders hunched against the rain. His hair was wet and stuck to his forehead. His cheeks looked too hollow, like he hadn't eaten enough for a long time. He held a thin plastic bag in one hand. In the other, he clutched the strap of a backpack that looked like it had been dragged across many streets. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't acting brave. He looked like someone who had walked too far with nowhere to stop. Nola's first thought was simple, don't open it. Her second thought was quieter and worse. What if he collapses on my porch? She slid the chain on the door, opened it just a crack, and kept her body behind it. "Yes?" she said. The young man lifted his head. His eyes were tired. But they were sharp, like he was watching every move she made. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. I know this is strange. I know you don't know me." Nola didn't speak. He swallowed. His lips were pale from cold. "My name is Cairo," he said. "And you're Nola." Her stomach tightened. She hadn't told him her name. There was no sign outside, no mailbox close enough to read in the rain. "How do you know that?" she asked. Cairo held up his hands a little, like he didn't want to scare her. Please don't close the door yet." Nola's fingers gripped the edge of the door until her knuckles turned white. Cairo looked down for a moment, then back up. His voice came out softer. "I'm your brother's son." The air in the hallway felt like it vanished. Nola stared at him. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe properly. Her brother. That word was a locked box in her mind. She never opened it. She never touched it unless she had to. Cairo's mouth trembled slightly, but he kept going. "Your brother, Elias." Nola's body went cold all at once, like someone poured icy water inside her. No one said that name in her house, not ever. She wanted to slam the door. She wanted to laugh because it sounded impossible. She wanted to shout because her chest suddenly hurt, but she did none of those things. She just whispered, "No." Cairo nodded like he expected that. "I know. You think I'm lying." "Elias doesn't have a son," Nola said. Even though she didn't know if it was true, she just needed it to be true. Cairo swallowed again. "He does." Nola's mind flashed backward, fast like lightning. Her brother's smile, his smooth voice. The way he used to say, "Trust me, Nola, I'll handle it." And then the day everything broke. The money, the inheritance, $635,000 that was supposed to help her family, help their future, help their children. Gone. And Elias, gone with it. 35 years of silence. Nola's breath came out shaky. If you're his son, she said slowly, then where is he? Cairo's eyes flicked to the street behind him. He looked scared for a second, like he thought someone might be watching. I don't know, he said. I haven't seen him in years. Nola's voice rose without her meaning it to. Then why are you here? Cairo looked down at the plastic bag and squeezed it so tight it crinkled loudly. He stopped. His throat moved like he was trying not to cry. I didn't come for trouble. Nola waited. Cairo lifted his eyes again. Can I have some water? Just water. Not money. Not a phone. Not a rye. Water. That small request hit Nola harder than anything else. People who came to trick you asked for big things fast. People who were starving asked for what they needed to stay standing. Still, she didn't open the door wider. You can get water anywhere, she said. Cairo's lips pressed together. Not at this hour, he whispered. Not when you look like me. Nola felt a sting behind her eyes. She hated that her heart softened, but it did. She looked at his shoes. The soles were torn. His socks were wet. His hands were red from cold, and then she noticed something else. A thin line on his left wrist, like an old mark that had healed wrongs. Not fresh, not new, just a sign of hard days. Nola's anger came back, sharp. If Elias stole all that money, why would his son look like this face? It didn't match. It didn't make sense. Nola opened the door a little more but kept the chain on. Wait there, she said. She walked to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and came back. She slid it through the gap like feeding a stray cat, and she hated herself for thinking that way. Cairo took it with both hands. He drank fast, then slower like he was trying to be polite. Thank you, he said, voice hoarse. Nola didn't answer. Cairo wiped his mouth with the back of his sleeve. Then he reached into his plastic bag and pulled out something small. He held it up carefully like it might break. It was a crumpled photo. Nola's eyes narrowed. What is that? Cairo stepped closer to the door, close enough that Nola could see the picture through the gap. A young man stood in the photo with one arm around a woman. His smile was wide and too confident. Nola knew that smile. Even after 35 years, even after all the pain. That was Elias. Nola's fingers went numb on the door. Cairo's voice shook. I found this in my mum's things. On the back, it had an address. This address. Nola stared at the photo like it was a ghost holding a knife. Her brother had been here, in her life, in her world, without her knowing. Nola's mouth opened, but no words came out. Cairo took a slow breath. I didn't come to hurt you, he said again. I came because I have nothing left, and because I need to know why my father took everything. Nola's heart hammered. She looked at the rain pouring behind him. She looked at his thin frame. She looked at the photo again. And then she asked the question that tore through her like fire. If Elias stole $635,000, her voice dropped to a whisper. Why are you sleeping on the streets? Cairo's eyes flickered with fear. And before he could answer, a car engine growled somewhere nearby. slow and close, like someone was creeping down the road. Cairo turned his head toward the sound. So did Nola. And in that moment, she realized something she hadn't thought about in decades. Maybe Elias wasn't gone. Maybe he was just hiding, and maybe this boy at her door wasn't the beginning of the truth. Maybe he was the bait. Nola didn't sleep that night. After the car sound faded, she kept the chain on the door and told Cairo, "Stay right there." Her voice tried to be firm, but her hands shook. She turned off the porch light and watched through a narrow curtain. The street looked empty. Rain washed the road shiny. If a car had been there, it was gone now. When she opened the door again, Cairo was still standing in the same spot, wet and still, like he was afraid any movement would make her change her mind. Nola hated how her heart pulled in two directions at once. One part of her whispered, "He's family." The other part shouted, "Family is what broke you." "Come in," she said finally, stepping back. Cairo hesitated. "Are you sure?" Nola pointed one finger at him. "You come in, you follow my rules. You don't touch anything that isn't yours. You don't go into other rooms, and you tell me the truth." Cairo nodded fast. "Yes, Mom." She didn't like the "Mom." It made her feel old and tired, but she let it pass. She led him to the kitchen, the safest room in her mind. No soft couches that made people too comfortable. No family photos in the living room that could be used like weapons. She gave him a towel and an old sweatshirt from a drawer. "Bathroom is there. 5 minutes." When he left, Nola stood alone under the kitchen light, staring at the crumpled photo he had shown her. Elias. Her brother's face stared back with that same confident smile, like the world was a game he always won. Nola's chest tightened. She took the photo, walked to the hallway closet, and reached up to the top shelf. She pulled down a small tin box. It was dull and scratched, like it had been hidden and moved 100 times. Inside were papers she almost never opened. Old letters, bank statements, a copy of the inheritance paperwork, and one yellow sticky note with her own handwriting from long ago. "Don't trust him again." Her eyes burned. She pressed her lips together until the sting went away. When Cairo came back, his hair was damp and combed with his fingers. The sweatshirt hung loose on him. He looked younger now, like a kid trying to pretend he was grown. Nola set a plate of toast on the table. She didn't sit. She stayed standing, arms crossed. "Start from the beginning," she said, "but not your beginning. Mine." Cairo blinked. "Yours?" Nola tapped the tin box. 35 years ago. Tell me what you know about the money." Cairo's face went careful. "I only know pieces. People talked around it, like it was a bad smell." "Say it," Nola said. Cairo swallowed. "They said, my father took a lot. He ran and everyone hated him." Nola's jaw clenched. Not everyone," she said, then stopped. "Because that wasn't true. Not anymore." She pulled out a paper from the tin box and smoothed it flat on the table. The numbers were printed in black ink, clean and cruel. $635,000. Cairo stared at it like it was not real. "That was ours," Nola said. "Not just mine. Our families. Your father's too, yes. But it was meant to be shared fairly. To build something. To keep us safe." Cairo's eyes moved from the paper to her face. "You lost all of it?" Nola let out a short laugh with no joy. Not lost, stolen. Then, before she could stop herself, the past grabbed her like a hand around the wrist and pulled her back. It started with a phone call. She remembered the exact sound of the old phone ringing, sharp and urgent, while she was stirring soup on the stove. "Dad is gone," her aunt said. Her voice cracked like wood. Nola's knees went weak. She sat on the kitchen floor, still holding the spoon, soup bubbling behind her like the world didn't care. The funeral came fast. People cried, hugged, said kind words. But behind the tears there was another thing too. Money. It always showed up when someone died. After the funeral, the family gathered in a small office that smelled like paper and old coffee. That was where she saw the number. $635,000. It looked huge on the page. It looked like a miracle. Nola and her husband were struggling back then. Bills piled up on the table. Their car made strange noises. They wanted a child but worried they couldn't afford one. Elias sat across from her in the lawyer's office, legs crossed like he had all the time in the world. And he wore a nice watch even though he was always between jobs. He leaned forward, smiling. "This changes everything," he said. Nola wanted to believe him. The lawyer explained the process. Accounts, signatures, transfers. It sounded like a language Nola didn't speak. Elias spoke it easily. "I can handle the paperwork," he offered. "I'll make sure it's done right. Less stress for everyone." Nola's husband frowned. "Why you?" Elias spread his hands. "Because I know what I'm doing, and because I'm family." That word again. Family. Nola looked at Elias and remembered them as kids, sharing bread, sharing jokes, sharing the same roof. She ignored the small warning in her stomach. She signed what Elias put in front of her, not because she was careless, because she trusted the person holding the pen out to her. A week later, Elias called her with a bright voice. "It's done," he said. "All set. We'll meet soon and split everything properly." Nola felt lighter for the first time in years. Then she waited and waited. Days turned into weeks. Elias stopped answering calls. When he did answer, he was always busy. "Tomorrow," he said. "Next week," he said. "Don't worry so much," he said. Then the bank letter came. Nola opened it at the kitchen table. Her hands shook so badly she tore the envelope crooked. The letter said the account was empty. Not low, not partially moved. Empty. Nola thought it had to be a mistake. She drove to the bank right away, holding the paper like it could save her. The teller looked at the computer screen and then at Nola's face. The teller's smile vanished. "Ma'am," the teller said slowly. The funds were withdrawn and transferred." "By who?" Nola asked, even though she already knew. The teller hesitated, then said the name. Elias. Nola's ears rang. The bank office felt too small. The air felt too thick. She ran outside and threw up in the parking lot. When she called Elias, the number didn't work. When she drove to his apartment, the door was open. The place was half empty, like someone packed in a rush. A neighbour said, "He left last night, took a suitcase, didn't say where." Nola went to the police. The officer asked questions in a tired voice, like he'd heard this story too many times. "Did you sign anything?" "Yes," Nola whispered. "Did you give him permission to handle the money?" I thought he was helping." The officer leaned back. then it may be hard to prove theft hard. That word stayed in Nola's mouth like ash. Hard meant slow. Hard meant maybe never. Hard meant Elias might win. For months, Nola chased paper trails and dead ends. She called lawyers. She begged the bank for answers. She learned what it meant to feel ashamed for trusting your own blood. And then one day, she realized something worse than the money being gone. Elias didn't just steal the inheritance. He stole her ability to feel safe. Now across the table, Cairo sat very still, listening like every word was heavy. When Nola finished, the kitchen was quiet except for the clock. Cairo's voice came out small. So he did it. For sure. Nola stared at the paper again. For sure. Cairo looked down at his hands. Then, he had $635,000. Yes. Cairo's face tightened like he was trying to solve a puzzle that didn't fit. Then why did my mom and I struggle? Why did we move place to place? Why was there never enough? Nola's eyes narrowed, because that was the same question that had been burning inside her since the moment he knocked. And suddenly, another thought pushed forward, sharp and frightening. What if Elias didn't just steal and run? What if he came back, quietly, more than once? Nola stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. Cairo flinched. What? Nola walked to the front window and lifted the curtain just a little. The rain had eased into a thin drizzle. And across the street, under the weak streetlight, a dark car sat parked with its lights off. It hadn't been there earlier. Nola's breath caught. Cairo stepped beside her, whispering, "That's the car I heard." Nola didn't answer, because in her gut, she knew something that made her blood run cold. This wasn't just a family reunion. Someone was watching her house. Nola kept the curtain lifted for a long time. The car across the street did not move. No lights, no horn, no door opening. It just sat there like a quiet threat. Cairo's breathing got faster. "I swear I didn't bring anyone here," he whispered. Nola didn't look at him. "You don't swear. You prove." She stepped away from the window and turned off the kitchen light so the house would look darker. Then she walked to the front door and checked the chain again, even though it was already locked. After that, she did something she hadn't done in years, and she pulled out her old phone and dialed a number she kept saved under a plain name, Holden Office. It rang twice. Then a sleepy voice answered. "Hello?" "Mr. Holden," Nola said, keeping her voice low. "It's Nola." A pause. Then his voice changed, more awake. "Nola, at this hour, there's a young man in my house," she said. "He says he's Elias's son." Silence filled the line for a second, thick like wet wool. Then Holden exhaled. "Oh." Nola hated that sound. It sounded like he already knew trouble was coming. "I need advice," she said. "And I need it now." Holden's voice dropped. "Are you safe?" Nola looked at Cairo. He stood near the table with his hands open like he didn't know where to put them. "I'm safe," she said. "But there's a car sitting across my street with the lights off." Holden cleared his throat. "Do not open your door again tonight." "I won't," Nola said. "And do not mention any papers or money," he added quickly. "Not out loud, not near windows." Nola's stomach tightened. "Why would you say that?" Holden hesitated. because people listen when they think there's something worth taking. Nola hung up before she could say something sharp. She didn't like being afraid in her own home. Cairo spoke softly. I can leave. Nola turned and looked at him. His face wasn't demanding, it wasn't smug, it was tired. Like the word leave was something he'd said 1,000 times in his life. You don't walk back into the rain at midnight, she said. Not with a car watching. You stay where I can see you. Cairo nodded. He sat slowly at the kitchen table and folded his hands. He looked like a student waiting to be scolded. Nola went to the hall closet and pulled out an old spare keychain with a tiny alarm button on it. She pressed it once to make sure it worked. A loud beep jumped into the air. Cairo flinched. Good, Nola said. It's loud. She returned to the table and sat down across from him. For the first time, she really looked at his face. He had Elias's eyes, not the same colour, but the same shape. The same way they watched everything. It made her angry, it made her sad, it made her curious. Tell me about you, she said, but keep it simple. Where did you sleep last night? Cairo swallowed. Behind the grocery store, there's a spot near the loading dock where the wind doesn't hit as hard. Nola's mouth tightened. And before that? Shelter, he said. 2 nights. Then they were full. Nola hated that the world could be that cruel and keep spinning. What about your mother? She asked. Cairo's eyes dropped. Her name was Maris. She got sick when I was a kid. After she died, everything got messy. How messy? Nola asked. Cairo's fingers moved together, rubbing thumb against thumb. Homes, foster places, some okay, some not. Lots of moving, lots of rules, lots of people saying they'd help and then not helping. Nola felt the urge to reach across the table and hold his hands still, but she didn't. Touch could be mistaken for trust, and trust was expensive. Did your mother ever talk about Elias? Nola asked. Cairo nodded once. Not much. She'd get tense, like she was holding her breath. Sometimes she'd say, your father is not coming back. Or she'd say, he made choices. What choices? Nola pressed. Cairo shook his head. She wouldn't say, but I knew he had money once. I heard it from an older cousin. They said my dad took a big inheritance and disappeared. Nola's jaw clenched. And that's why you came here? Cairo looked up, eyes shining but stubborn. I came because I found this address and because I couldn't keep guessing. I needed someone who actually knew him. Someone who would tell me the truth. Nola stared at him. And what do you want from me? Cairo didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. I want to know if I'm trash because of him, he said. People look at me like I'm nothing, like I belong outside. If my father was a thief, does that mean I'm the same? Nola's chest squeezed. You are not your father, she said, firm and flat. Cairo blinked fast, like he didn't expect kindness to sound so strict. Nola leaned back. But, she added, you can still lie. You can still hurt people. So I need facts. Cairo nodded quickly. Okay. Nola took a notebook from a drawer and a pen. Full name. Cairo Vale, he said. Nola wrote it down. Date of birth, he told her. Last place you lived with an address, she said. Cairo hesitated, then gave her one from years ago. A small apartment building, he said. He remembered the smell of the stairs more than the numbers on the doors. Nola wrote everything, not because she enjoyed it, but because paper didn't forget. And she was done trusting feelings. "Tomorrow," she said, "we go see Holden. In daylight. You tell him what you told me. If your story changes, you leave." Cairo's shoulders dropped like someone removed a heavy backpack from his spine. "Thank you," he whispered. Nola held up a hand. "Don't thank me yet." She stood and walked to the window again. The car across the street was still there. Nola stared at it until her eyes hurt. Then she did something simple. She turned on the porch light. The bright light washed the front steps. If someone wanted to hide, it would be harder now. A minute passed, then another. Finally, the dark car's engine started. It rolled forward slowly like it didn't want to be noticed. But Nola noticed. It drove down the street and disappeared around the corner. Nola let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Cairo spoke behind her. "That was because of me, wasn't it?" Nola didn't answer right away. She watched the empty road. Then she said, "Maybe." She turned back to him. "Or maybe it was because of Elias." Cairo's eyes widened. "You think he's still alive?" Nola folded her arms. "I don't know what I think." She walked to the hall closet and pulled out a spare blanket and an old pillow. She set them on the couch where she could see the front door from her bedroom hallway. "You sleep there," she said. "You don't wander. If you need the bathroom, you wake me." Cairo nodded. "I will." Nola paused, then added, "And Cairo?" "Yes. If you're really his son, then there are things you deserve to know." Cairo's voice cracked. "Like what?" Nola's eyes went to the tin box on the kitchen shelf. "Like why the money disappeared," she said, "and why you ended up with nothing." She turned off the living room lamp and headed toward her room, keeping her steps steady. For the first time in a long time, Nola felt something other than anger. A thin, sharp determination. Tomorrow she would stop guessing. Tomorrow she would start digging. Morning light made the kitchen look ordinary again. The rain had stopped and the street outside was calm. No dark car, no strange engine sounds, just a wet road, a few birds, and the quiet hum of life pretending nothing happened. Nola didn't trust it. She made tea, but she didn't drink much. She kept looking at the window like it might blink first. Cairo sat at the table with his hands around a warm mug. He looked cleaner now, but still thin. He didn't talk unless she asked. That, Nola noticed, was not how liars acted. Liars filled the air with words. Cairo watched and waited. "Eat," Nola said, sliding a bowl of oatmeal toward him. He nodded and ate slowly, like he didn't want to take too much. When he finished, Nola grabbed her keys and her coat. "We're going," she said. "To where?" Cairo asked, though he already knew. "Holden," Nola said. "And you'll say the same story you told me." Cairo stood up fast. "Okay." Before they left, Nola checked the locks. Then she did something else. She picked up the tin box, walked to her bedroom, and hid it under a loose floorboard she'd fixed years ago. She had hoped she would never need that hiding place again, but hope didn't protect anyone. Outside, the air smelled fresh. The sky was grey but calm. As they walked down the steps, Mrs. Tamsin appeared like she had been waiting behind her curtains all night. "Nola," she called, voice loud and sharp. "I saw a stranger at your house." Nola kept walking. "Good morning to you too." Mrs. Tamsin hurried closer, eyes wide. That boy, he's still here, isn't he? Cairo stiffened. Nola stepped slightly in front of him without thinking. He's with me, she said. Mrs. Tamsin leaned in. People like that bring trouble. You're a good woman, Nola, but you can't save everybody. Nola's voice stayed flat. I'm not trying to save everybody. She met Mrs. Tamsin's stare. I'm trying to protect my home, Mrs. Tamsin sniffed. Then send him away. Nola didn't answer. She guided Cairo toward her car. As she opened the driver's door, Mrs. Tamsin added in a quieter voice, I saw a car last night too. It sat there a while, then left. Nola paused. What kind of car? Mrs. Tamsin frowned, thinking. Dark. 4-door. No lights. Nola's stomach tightened again, but she kept her face steady. Oh, thanks, she said, and got into the car. Cairo sat in the passenger seat, shoulders tense. I didn't know someone would watch. Nola started the engine. Maybe they weren't watching you, she said. Maybe they were watching me. They drove to Mr. Holden's office across town. It was in a short building with peeling paint and a sign that looked like it had been there since dinosaurs. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. Mr. Holden came out slowly from the back room. He was older now, with grey hair and heavy eyelids, but his eyes still looked sharp when he focused. He saw Nola first, then Cairo. Holden stopped walking. He stared at Cairo's face like he was looking at a memory. Cairo swallowed. Sir? Holden's throat moved. You look... He stopped himself and cleared his throat. Sit. Both of you. They sat in 2 stiff chairs across from his desk. Holden folded his hands. Tell me, he said, looking at Cairo. Why are you here? Cairo glanced at Nola, then back to Holden. I'm looking for the truth, he said. About my father, about the inheritance, about why my life ended up the way it did. Holden's face tightened. Your father's name? Elias, Cairo said. Holden didn't react much, but his pen stopped moving. That small pause told Nola everything. He knew. Nola leaned forward. He's claiming he's Elias's son, she said. And before you say anything, I want to do this properly. Holden nodded slowly. Proper is good. He turned to Cairo. Full name, Cairo answered. Mother's name, Holden asked. Maris, Cairo said. Holden's eyebrows lifted slightly. Maris, he repeated softer. Nola caught that too. So you've heard of her, Nola said. Holden didn't deny it. He rubbed his forehead like he had a headache that lived there permanently. Elias had a way of creating messy paths, Holden said, and leaving other people to clean up. Cairo's hands tightened in his lap. Did he take the money? Holden looked at Nola before he answered. The account was emptied. The signatures were correct. The access was legal on paper because of what was signed. Nola's jaw clenched. Which means what in normal words? Holden sighed. It means he had permission to move the money. It also means he used that permission in a way no decent person would. Cairo's voice shook. So he stole it. Holden held up one finger. Morally, yes. Legally, it's complicated. Nola hated that word. Complicated was what people said when they didn't want to help. Holden opened a drawer and pulled out an old folder worn at the edges. He set it on the desk carefully. I kept copies, he said, because the case felt wrong. Nola's eyes narrowed. You kept copies for 35 years. Holden's mouth tightened, because I knew someday it would matter. He slid one paper toward Nola. This is the transfer record, and this... He slid another paper. Is the note Elias signed? Nola stared. The note was short. Too neat. Too calm. It looked like something someone wrote when they planned to disappear. Cairo leaned forward, eyes wide. What does it mean? Holden spoke slowly. It means he expected anger. He expected questions, and he prepared for them. Nola looked at Cairo's face. She saw fear there, but also a painful hope, and like maybe this man could finally be real to him. Holden leaned back. If you want the truth without guessing, he said, there is one step you can take. Nola already knew. She just didn't like it. A DNA test, she said. Holden nodded. If Cairo is family, it changes how you move forward. It won't bring the money back by itself, but it gives you a solid ground to stand on. Cairo's voice was small. I'll do it. Nola studied him for a long moment. Then she said, We do it today. Holden raised an eyebrow. Today? Nola stood. I'm done waiting for the next surprise. She turned to Cairo. You want the truth? Then we start with the one thing that can't be argued. Cairo nodded, swallowing hard. Okay. As they walked out of the office, Nola felt something strange in her chest. Not peace, not yet, but a clear path. For the first time since that inheritance disappeared, she wasn't just remembering the past. She was pushing back. The clinic smelled like soap and cold air. Nola sat stiff in the plastic chair, hands folded tight in her lap. Cairo sat across from her, staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow him. A nurse called their names and guided them into a small room. It didn't look scary, but Nola still felt like she was about to hear something that could change her whole life. The nurse explained everything in simple words. A cheek swab, a few signatures, results later. Cairo didn't complain. He didn't act offended. He just did what he was told. Nola noticed that too. People who were trying to trick you often fought small rules. They tried to control the room. Cairo did the opposite. He acted like he was used to being tested, like life had asked him to prove himself again and again. When it was done, the nurse said, We'll contact you when the results are ready. Nola walked out of the clinic feeling like her feet were not fully touching the ground. In the car, Cairo finally spoke. If I'm not really related, will you send me away? Nola gripped the steering wheel. I'll do what's right, she said. Cairo nodded slowly. Okay. That answer didn't satisfy either of them. Back at home, Nola made lunch. She kept it simple. Sandwiches, fruit, warm tea. Cairo ate carefully, still trying not to take too much. After lunch, Nola pointed to the couch. You can rest, she said, but you stay where I can see you. Cairo lay down with the blanket and stared at the ceiling. Nola sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper making a list. She wrote, DNA results, where Maris lived, where Elias went, where the money moved. She stared at the last line for a long time. Where the money moved. Because that was the piece that never made sense. If Elias had taken $635,000, how did everything end with a hungry kid and a faded photo? That afternoon, Nola drove alone to the bank. She didn't bring Cairo. Not yet. She didn't want strangers studying his face. At the bank, the manager was younger than Nola expected. He spoke politely, but his eyes had that "this is old history" look. Nola didn't let him drift. "I'm not here to chat," she said. "I'm here because I have paperwork, and I want records." The manager's polite smile thinned. "Ma'am, 35 years is a long time." Nola slid copies across the desk. "And this is real." The manager sighed and typed. He printed what he could. Not everything was available, but enough was there to make Nola's stomach twist. The money had moved fast, one account to another, then split into different transfers. Some went to places that looked like businesses. Some looked like personal payments. Some had names she didn't recognize. It wasn't one clean theft. It looked like Elias had grabbed the money, then thrown it into a storm. Nola left the bank with a thin folder and a heavy heart. When she got home, Cairo was sitting upright on the couch, shoes on, like he was ready to run if she told him to. Nola held up the folder. "I got some records." Cairo stood. "Did you find him?" "No," Nola said. "Not yet." Cairo's shoulders dropped. Nola pointed to the kitchen. "Come, sit." They sat at the table again. Nola didn't show him everything, not because she wanted to hide it, but because she didn't want to overwhelm him. She chose one paper, one clear part. "This is the trail," she said. "Not complete, but it shows the money moved in pieces, fast." Cairo stared at the numbers like they were written in another language. "So he spent it?" Cairo asked. Nola shook her head. "Maybe. Or maybe someone else spent it for him. Or maybe he tried to make more and lost it." Cairo's lips parted. "If he had that kind of money, why didn't my mum have a safe home?" Nola leaned back and looked at him carefully. "Tell me something. Did your mum ever get help from him? Even once?" Cairo frowned, thinking hard. "There were times," he said slowly, "when she'd come home with groceries we didn't have money for. Or she'd pay rent and not say how. But it never lasted." Nola felt a cold little click inside her head, like a lock turning. "Short bursts," Nola murmured. "Then nothing." Cairo's eyes widened. "You think he came around sometimes?" "I think he stayed close enough to leave damage," Nola said, "and far enough to avoid responsibility." Cairo looked down. "That sounds like him, even though I barely knew him." Nola surprised herself by reaching across the table and sliding a napkin toward him, because his eyes were wet. Cairo wiped his face quickly, embarrassed. "Sorry." "Don't apologize for being human," Nola said. 2 days later, the call finally came. Nola answered on the first ring. "Yes?" she said sharply. The clinic worker spoke in a steady voice. "Ms. Nola, your results are in." Nola held her breath. "And?" There was a small pause as the worker checked the file. "The test confirms a close biological relationship," the worker said. "Cairo is consistent with being your nephew." Nola's hand tightened around the phone. She didn't feel happy right away. She felt punched. Because the past wasn't a story anymore. It was sitting in her house, drinking her tea, sleeping under her roof. She hung up and walked slowly to the living room. Cairo stood up the moment he saw her face. "What is it?" Nola stared at him for a long second. Then she said, "Your family." Cairo blinked like he didn't understand the words. "Family," he repeated. voice cracking. Nola nodded once. Yeah. Cairo's knees seemed to give up. He sat down hard on the couch, breathing fast. He covered his mouth with his hand like he was trying to hold something inside himself. Nola sat across from him and spoke carefully, like each word mattered. This does not erase what your father did, she said, but it means something important. Cairo looked up, eyes shining. What? It means you don't have to carry his shame alone, Nola said. You don't have to sleep outside anymore. Cairo made a sound that was half a laugh, half a sob. He scrubbed his face with his sleeve, trying to pull himself together. Nola stood and walked to her bedroom. She lifted the loose floorboard and pulled out the tin box. Then she returned and set it on the table between them. Cairo stared at it. Nola placed her palm on the lid. This box is why my life changed, she said. And it's also how we're going to find the truth. Cairo sat very still. How? Nola opened the box and pulled out one old paper that had been folded many times. She pointed to a name on it that Cairo had never seen before. This, she said, is the first person I want to look into. Cairo leaned closer, reading carefully. Nola's voice stayed calm, but her eyes were hard. Because if Elias didn't burn the money alone, she said, then someone helped him. The name on the paper made Cairo sit up straight. It wasn't Elias. It wasn't Maris. It was someone else. Someone who looked like a shadow in the money trail. Nola tapped the page. This is where we start, she said. We don't chase feelings. We chase facts. Cairo stared at the letters like they might bite him. What if this person is dangerous? Nola's eyes didn't move. Then we'll be careful. But we won't be blind. The next weeks were slow work. Nola and Cairo visited places in daylight. They asked questions politely. They learned how often doors stayed closed when you said the word inheritance. They learned people became friendly only when they thought you had something to offer. Some days they came home with nothing but tired legs. Other days they came home with one small piece. An old address, a business that no longer existed, a phone number that went dead. Nola kept a notebook on the kitchen table and wrote everything down. Cairo watched her do it, quiet and serious. You're like a detective, he said once. Nola didn't smile. No, I'm like a woman who got tricked once and refused to be tricked again. Cairo nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. He started helping more. He cleaned the yard without being asked. He fixed a loose cabinet hinge. He carried groceries like it was a job he was proud to do. At night, when Nola thought he was asleep, she sometimes heard him whispering to himself. Not scary words, just questions. Why did you leave? He would murmur. Why did you take it? Why didn't you take me too, if you were going to ruin everything? Nola would lie in her bed and stare at the ceiling, feeling two pains at once. Her own and his. Months passed. Then a year. Cairo got his papers sorted out. It took time and patience and a lot of waiting in ugly rooms with harsh lights. But it happened. He got a job at a small repair shop. The owner was a tough man with a kind voice, and he liked how Cairo worked without complaining. Then Cairo started coming home with grease on his hands and a little pride in his step. Nola watched that pride grow, slow like a plant that finally had water. Sometimes, on good days, they almost felt normal. They ate dinner together. They argued about silly things like which show to watch. Cairo even laughed once when Nola burned toast and pretended it was extra crispy on purpose. But the past didn't fully go away. It sat in the tin box. It sat in the notebook. It sat in the way Nola still checked her locks every night. And it sat in the question that never stopped hurting. If Elias stole $635,000, where did it really go? Over time, pieces began to connect. The name on that paper led to another name. That name led to an old business record. And that record led to a place that used to be an office. Now it was a nail salon with bright pink signs. Nola stood outside that salon one afternoon, holding the old paper. "This is where the money touched ground," she said quietly. Cairo frowned, and then it vanished again. Nola nodded. Exactly. They learned something else too. Elias hadn't just disappeared like smoke. He had moved like a man who didn't want to be found, but also couldn't stop himself from coming close. There were small sightings across the years. A cousin who claimed she saw him at a bus station. A neighbour who swore she saw him in a grocery aisle staring from behind a shelf. Most stories were messy, but one detail kept repeating. Elias always looked over his shoulder, like he feared someone, or like he owed someone. 2 more years passed. Cairo turned from a hungry stranger into a steady young man. He filled out. His eyes didn't look so desperate anymore. He saved money. He bought himself a decent coat. He even took a night class saying, "I want better than just surviving." Nola felt proud of him in a way that surprised her, but she didn't say it often. She showed it in small ways instead. A warm plate kept aside, a clean towel placed on the chair. A quiet, "Be careful," when he left for work. Then one afternoon, 3 years after that rainy night, Nola came home from the market and saw a car parked near her curb. Not the same dark car from before. This one was older, dusty. The paint looked tired. A man stood beside it. Nola's grocery bag slipped a little in her hand. He was thin, thinner than any man should be. His shoulders drooped like the weight of his own body was too much. His hair was grey now, but the shape of his face was familiar in the worst way. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and Nola felt the world tilt. That smile was gone, but she still knew the bones under the skin. Elias. He looked at her like he was seeing sunlight after years in a cave. "Nola," he said, voice rough. Nola didn't move. Her heart didn't race the way it used to. It felt colder than that. It felt sharp. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Elias swallowed hard. I came to see you." Nola's fingers tightened around the grocery bag. "After 35 years?" Elias nodded, eyes shiny. I know how that sounds." Nola set the bag down slowly on the porch step. "You don't get to show up like this," she said. "You don't get to say my name like we're family." Elias flinched at the word. Then he looked past her shoulder toward the front window. His voice dropped. "Is he here?" Nola's stomach clenched. "Who?" Elias whispered. "My son." Nola's anger surged. "You don't get to claim him now." Elias took a shaky step closer. "Please," he said. "Just let me talk to him." Nola's eyes narrowed. "Why now?" Elias's face twisted, like he was trying not to fall apart in front of her. Because I don't have time, he said. Nola's voice turned hard as stone. Time for what? Elias swallowed, then forced the words out. The doctor said I have about 2 months, he whispered. Maybe less. Nola stared at him. She waited for her heart to soften. It didn't. Instead, she heard the old sounds in her head again. Bank papers, slammed doors. The silence after her calls went unanswered. Elias lifted his hands, trembling. I'm not here for money, he said quickly. I'm not, I swear. Nola's eyes stayed flat. You already took the money. Elias's mouth opened, then closed again. From inside the house, a door creaked. Footsteps. Cairo's voice called out, calm but alert. Aunt Nola? Nola didn't turn around right away. She kept her eyes on Elias. Elias looked terrified now, like a man who had run his whole life and finally hit a wall. Cairo stepped onto the porch, then stopped when he saw Elias. For a moment, nobody spoke. The air felt tight. Cairo's gaze moved over Elias's face, searching, comparing, trying to match a real man to the empty space in his life. Elias whispered, Cairo. Cairo didn't answer. He simply asked, and in a steady voice that hurt more than shouting ever could, Are you him? Cairo stood on the porch like a statue. The wind moved his shirt a little, but he didn't move. His eyes stayed on Elias, sharp and steady, like he was afraid blinking would make this moment disappear. Elias's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked smaller than Nola remembered, not because he had shrunk, but because fear had finally caught him. Yes, Elias said in a hoarse whisper. I'm him. Cairo's face didn't soften. It didn't harden either. It just went quiet, like something inside him sat down. I thought you were dead, Cairo said. Elias's eyes filled. I didn't deserve to be alive, he muttered. Nola stepped between them. Stop, she said. No speeches on my porch. Elias looked at her like a child caught stealing. Nola, please. I'm not here to fight. You don't get to choose what you're here for, Nola snapped. You don't get to appear after 35 years, after stealing $635,000, and act like you're a guest. Elias flinched at the number. Cairo's voice stayed calm, but it cut deep. So it's true. You took it. Elias stared at the porch boards. Yes. Nola's chest tightened. She waited for anger to explode, but something else happened first. She looked at Cairo, this young man who had slept behind a grocery store, who had carried his life in a plastic bag, who still said, thank you, like it mattered. And she thought, I refuse to let Elias break him too. Nola lifted her chin. Come inside, she said. Cairo blinked. Aunt? I said inside, Nola repeated. Both of you. Elias hesitated, like he expected her to slam the door in his face. Then he shuffled in. Nola didn't offer him tea. She didn't offer him a chair. She pointed to the kitchen table like a judge pointing to a witness stand. Sit, she ordered. Elias sat. Cairo sat too, but farther away, like he didn't want the same air. Nola stood at the head of the table. Her voice became calm, which was always her most dangerous voice. Rule 1, she said. No lying. Elias swallowed. Okay. Rule 2, Nola said. You don't touch Cairo. You don't cry to him. You don't ask him for forgiveness. You answer questions. Cairo's hands clenched, but he nodded. Nola reached into a drawer and pulled out her phone. She placed it on the table, screen down. I'm recording, she said. If you refuse, you leave. Elias's eyes widened. Nola? You stole my future once, she said. You will not steal my truth now. Elias stared at the phone like it was a trap. Then he nodded. Record. Nola pressed the button. Start, she said. Where did the money go? Elias closed his eyes for a moment, like he was watching his own worst memory. I took it, he admitted. I told myself I'd grow it. I thought I could turn it into more, bigger. I wanted everyone to look at me and say I was smart. Nola's jaw tightened. And? Elias's voice cracked. And I was not smart. He explained it in simple pieces. He put money into deals he didn't understand. He trusted men who smiled too much. He tried to fix losses by throwing more money at them. Every time he lost, he told himself the next move would save him, but it never did. Cairo's eyes stayed locked on Elias. And my mum? He asked quietly. Where was she while you were playing with money? Elias flinched. I met Maris later, he said, after I'd already started losing. I didn't tell her the truth. I told her I'd had bad luck. Cairo's voice rose for the first time. So you lied to her too? Elias nodded, tears slipping down his face. Yes. Nola didn't hand him a tissue. And why was he on the streets? Nola asked, sharp. If you were his father, why was he hungry? Elias's shoulders shook. Because I ran, he whispered. I ran from debt. I ran from shame. I ran from the people I owed. Nola's eyes narrowed. The car. Elias froze. Nola leaned forward. The car outside my house that first night. That wasn't random. Elias's face drained of colour. No. Cairo's breath caught. Someone was watching me? Elias nodded slowly. People followed me for years. When I heard you found her address, he looked at Cairo, ashamed. I panicked. I thought they might follow you too. Nola felt a cold anger settle into her bones. So my home was put at risk because you couldn't face what you did, Elias whispered. Yes. Cairo stared at him like he was seeing the full shape of his pain for the first time. Not just a missing father, but a coward who kept choosing himself. Nola stopped the recording. Then she spoke with a steady voice. Here is my choice, she said. Both men looked up. Nola pointed to Cairo. He is not paying for your sins. Then she pointed to Elias. And you are not leaving again. Elias blinked fast. What do you mean? Nola took out another paper, one Holden had helped prepare months ago, just in case. She slid it across the table. Here, you will sign a full statement, Nola said. Everything you told us, names, places, what you remember, who you owed, who helped you, all of it. Elias stared at the paper. Nola, I'm sick. I don't care how many weeks you have, Nola said. Her voice did not shake. For once you will spend your time doing the right thing. Cairo swallowed. Aunt Nola? Nola softened only a little when she looked at him. This is for you, she said. So nobody can call you a liar. So nobody can scare you in the dark. So you can live without his shadow. Cairo's eyes filled. And him? Nola looked at Elias. After you sign, she said, we take it to Holden, and we take it to the police. Not because I want revenge, she paused. Because I want the truth on record, and because I want you to face consequences, finally. Elias trembled. What, you'd turn me in, Cecil? Nola's voice stayed simple. You turned yourself in the moment you walked back into my life. Elias stared at the paper for a long time. Then he reached for the pen with shaking fingers. Cairo watched every movement, like he was watching a storm choose to calm. Elias signed. When he finished, he placed the pen down like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Nola gathered the papers and held them close. Then she looked at Cairo and said the words that mattered most. You are safe here. You are not alone and you will not be dragged back into the street because of him. Cairo's shoulders finally dropped, like his body understood it before his mind did. He nodded once, small and grateful. Nola turned to Elias one last time. You asked for forgiveness, she said, but you don't earn that with tears. You earn it with truth. Elias whispered, Okay. And for the first time in 35 years, Nola felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Control. If you want stories with twists like this, family secrets, shocking returns and hard choices, tap like, subscribe and comment truth below so I know to bring you the next one.